Hey guys, how you doing? So in the first video, we talked about conditions of democracy, right? The idea of multiple political parties, the idea of periodic elections, the idea of secret ballots, etc. And then we started to scrape the surface of the flaws of democracy, and we introduce what I like to think of as cancer for democracy, right? Cancer slowly kills you, and voter apathy I like to think of as cancer for democracy. But what we're going to talk about in this video, it's not cancer, it doesn't kill you slowly, it is Ebola, right? It is Ebola, and that is the influence of money in politics. Money in politics, guys, is the most dangerous issue that I see in the democratic system today. And hopefully at the end of this, I will convince you of that fact. So let's talk about conditions and flaws of democracy part 2. We're just going to be focusing on the power of corporations to dictate the democratic process. You think that America is a democracy? You could make a pretty good argument that in fact America is a plutocracy, government of the rich, by the rich, for the rich. It's no longer of the people, by the people, for the people. And we'll see if at the end of this, I can convince you that that is true. And guess what? I'm not an American, but Canadian politics is turning that way too. This could be the quick death of democracy. So another issue that we see in democratic systems is the power of lobby groups. Sometimes lobby groups, as you can see it on the slide here, sometimes lobby groups are called special interest groups. Now, not all lobby groups are necessarily bad. It all depends on what they are lobbying for. So for instance, Ducks Unlimited is a lobby group that lobbies the government, tries to influence the government to preserve wetlands, right? Wetlands, whether you know what they are or not, right, are an essential feature of our hydrologic cycle. They are natural filters in our water system. So Ducks Unlimited looks to maintain those. That's not bad. That's good, right? That's good. However, other lobby groups are less than perhaps good. And while they might have catchy names like Americans for Prosperity and things like that, what they actually lobby for definitely has more like sinister motives, right? Now, when did this all begin? Well, first of all, let's define what a lobby group is. So a lobby group, guys, is a group that tries to pressure government and they have more time, or more money. So more time, more money, and more expertise than individuals. And as a result, they have a disproportionate influence on government. Now, what are they lobbying for? They're lobbying for legislation, which is in line with their business interests, right? They want to ensure that any legislation that is passed in government is in line with their corporate interests. So I'll give you an example of one here in Alberta. Here in Alberta or in Canada, there's something known as the CAPP, the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. What do you think they lobby the government for? And by the way, that is the largest lobbying group here in Canada, is the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. What do you think they lobby for? Well, they're going to lobby against things like caps on carbon dioxide emissions. They're going to lobby for looser regulations when it comes to environmental protections and things like that, right? So again, guys, it all depends on what their motivation is. And the CAPP is a deep pocketed influence group, interest group that, you know, has a lot of power when it comes to legislation. Now, how does that work? Well, if you've ever heard the expression before, quid pro quo, which means I scratch your back, you scratch my back, that's basically what happens. Now, how does a lobby groups scratch the back of a politician? Well, politicians always want to get reelected, and reelection costs money. So what will happen, guys, is lobby groups will throw a fundraiser, and that fundraiser will raise money for the reelection campaign of a particular candidate. Now, that candidate gets that money from that fundraiser, and in return, they promise that they will not vote a certain way when it comes to legislation. And if you multiply this enough times over and over and over again, eventually these corporations have the ability to dictate what legislation is passed. Now, in the US, where did this all begin? Well, in the year 2010, there was a Supreme Court challenge known as Citizens United. It was Citizens United versus the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. And basically out of the Citizens United case came the idea, and you can see it on here on the slide, that money equals speech. So let's talk about the First Amendment of the United States of America, right? In their Constitution and, of course, their Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment says something to the effect of Congress shall pass no laws infringing on the freedom of expression and the right to free speech, right? Amongst other things, okay? Now, expression. The Supreme Court in this particular ruling ruled that the ability for a corporation or any person, right? Because they say corporations are people, which is wacky. But anyways, they say that, you know, any entity, business, corporation, individual, right? Who they give their money to, who they support using campaign contributions is a form of expression. And if you deny corporations giving as much as they want to whatever politician they want, you are denying them the right to free expression. Yes, you heard that right. So guys, now in America, money equals speech. And the more money you have, the louder your voice is. So as a result, I would argue, guys, that in the American political system now, if you don't have money, your voice does not matter. If you are not General Motors or Tesla or Ford or Walmart or Monsanto, right, and have deep pockets that you can just dole out that money to those politicians, then your voice is unheard. So if you remember when we're talking about democracy before, we said democracy is, government by the people, of the people, for the people. Well, I would argue since Citizens United in the United States, government has become by the rich, of the rich, for the rich. And rather than being a democracy, America is a plutocracy. And a plutocracy is a government that is ruled by the rich. So in my estimation, guys, there is no influence in politics that is more dangerous than corporate influence in politics. And an example would be, every time there's a mass shooting in the United States of America, what lobby group comes to the defense of, the major arms manufacturers and the ammunition manufacturers? Well, it's the NRA, right? The National Rifle Association. Every time there's a mass shooting in the United States of America, Americans overwhelmingly support the idea of sensible gun control, right? We're not talking about gun bans. We're just talking about some sort of gun control. And of course, it becomes a Second Amendment issue as framed by the NRA. It becomes a freedom issue. And I get that, but you can't tell me that something can't be done to stop the easy access to guns that we see in the United States of America. So I remember vividly after the school shooting in Newton, Connecticut, right? A gunman went into a school and killed, I'm going to say, like 20 small children and also some teachers in the school. Americans were shocked, and something like 85% of Americans supported some sort of gun control. Yet when it got to the American Senate, because of the influence of NRA money, it got shut down. So there's 3 videos on this particular slide that I encourage you heavily to watch. This first one will make your blood boil. It shows how for regular people whatever they want. The most supported idea versus the least supported idea, it basically has the same effect or the same level of the possibility of being passed by the American federal government. So whether everyone is like, this is the best idea ever, or everyone is like, this is the worst idea ever, it makes no difference in the legislative process. However, when it comes to what corporations want, they have a much larger chance of getting things passed in the American government. And the video will also show you that when corporations don't want something passed, they basically have a 100% success rate of getting legislation shut down, which is mind-boggling, right? Whatever happened to of the people, by the people, for the people. In this second video, it talks about how people need to stand up and become more engaged in politics. And then this one here basically equates lobbying to legalized bribery. And it's got 5 crazy facts about lobbyists. So as it says at the bottom of the slide, welcome to the free market of money in politics. Yes, you, average person like me and like you, we don't matter in the political game anymore. We really truly don't. And big surprise, here in Alberta, the UCP, and let me just bring it up here, the Alberta government has actually passed laws, as you can see, or is looking to pass laws about election finance. And political scientists are saying this is very distressing. It is believed that the UCP simply wants to weaken Alberta election finance laws so that they can just get more money poured into them by corporate interests, and then they'll just become shills for whatever corporate lobby group wants, right? For whatever, whatever special interest or whatever particular cause these corporations want. So this is rather distressing, and you can look it up, right? If you just look up UCP campaign finance changes, right, you will find that particular article. All right, let's keep moving here. So we have some political cartoons, right? And guys, this is an American cartoon from the Miami Herald. And right, you got Joe Public here standing there saying, I voted today, and he's very proud of himself, right? He's doing his democratic duty. And then you have the well-moneyed lobbyist who, the individual representing the capitalist system, smoking a cigar. It says, I bought the politician you voted for today. The next one, this is a Clay Bennett cartoon. At the Social 30 level, they love Clay Bennett. He produces some fantastic political cartoons here. So this political cartoon, we have a politician standing up there, right? The podium says Congress. And I like this. It says, nobody tells me what to do or say. And notice the pencil. What does it say there? Lobbyist. Obviously, this is ironically looking at how this person is definitely told what to do or what to say by those corporate interests. This is actually getting at the power of the NRA. I remember vividly after the school massacre in Newton, Colorado, we had the president of the United States at that time, President Barack Obama, who addressed the nation and he cried. Right? He actually had tears running down his cheeks as he memorialized the slain in that tragedy. And then on the other side here, we have an elephant, which represents the Republican Party, also known as the GOP, right? The Democrats are a donkey, and then the Republicans are an elephant. And you have tears of joy being wept by the Republicans or by the RNC, right? The Grand Old Party, the Republican National Convention, as they're getting those NRA dollars to make sure that nothing meaningful happens as far as change. Another one. So again, I love how they always portray the lobbyist as, this well-fed kind of business tycoon type individual, right? He's got money in his top pocket. He's got money busting out of his briefcase. And right, these two individuals on the left say 2 out of 3 people disapprove of the job Congress is doing. Who's the third person, right? And that well-paid lobbyist who just made a deal today, right? Got those dollars flowing, says, beats me, right? I don't know. All right, now, this is actually a former diploma exam source, and I love this. So I don't know if you're aware of the metaphor of like someone being in your back pocket, but if you have someone in your back pocket, it means you control them. And the insinuation of this political cartoon is it's looking at campaign finance. It's looking at the control that corporate America has when it comes to the left and the right. We think that, you know, campaign contributions are only an issue with the right. Well, that's simply not true. Both political parties, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, are beholden to corporate interests. I don't care what anyone says, whether it is Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, they're all in the pockets of corporate interests. And you can go online and Google who is donating to these campaigns of these individuals looking to become president. And sometimes it's the same groups, right? It's the same corporations or the same corporate lobbying groups that are giving money to the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, why would they do that? Why would they be donating money to two very opposite parties? Well, they want to make sure that they have their bread buttered on both sides of the political spectrum. They want to make sure that whether it's the left who wins or the right who wins, that they have those individuals in their back pocket. And then we have another former diploma source, and this is a good one. So we have, you know, the tree of democracy, right? We have the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the legislative branch. This should all be no surprise because we have spoken about this. But look at that root system underneath that tree. That root system is what is the most important part of that root system? What is the dominant one? It's not the voters. It's not activists. It is corporate interests who control the growth of that tree, right? So this is getting at what we've been talking about here today. All right, now this video, honestly, it is mind-boggling. I used to love Keith Olbermann. Sorry, I'm parched. I'm getting too excited. I used to love Keith Olbermann on MSNBC. And after the Citizens United ruling was passed by the Supreme Court of the United States, he did a special commentary about it. And what he envisions is basically a united corporate states of America, where one day America is ruled by corporations. Now, it is an Orwellian future that he's prognosticating, that he's predicting, and have a listen to what he says. Maybe it won't be that bad, but maybe it will, right? Maybe it will. So click this link, check out what Keith Olbermann has to say. Maybe one day here in Alberta, we're going to see Banff National Park brought to you by Walmart, right? Or maybe our Alberta government's going to be owned by Syncrude or Suncor or some other deep-pocketed oil interests, right? Sinopec, Shell Oil, who knows, right? Who knows? All right, now that brings us to these things called PACs, right? PACs. And this is an American phenomenon. PACs aren't that big yet here in Canada. They do exist, but not to the extent that they do in the United States of America. All right, so a PAC or a PAC, what does that stand for? It stands for Political Action Committee. These committees go back to the 1940s. And guys, up until Citizens United, these political action committees, aka lobby groups, special interest groups, were only able to donate up a maximum of $5,000 to any one candidate in any election cycle. So $5,000. Okay, that's reasonable, right? That's not so bad. Now, fast forward, and since Citizens United, what we have now are these things called super PACs, right? Super PACs. So as the term implies, super PACs are like PACs, but they're more super. How are they more super? Because they're less regulated. They're more super in the eyes of these super PACs. So since Citizens United, guys, the lack of regulation on how much they're able to give has basically proliferated the creation of these super PACs, these corporate interests that try to get exactly what they want from government. And since Citizens United, remember, money equals speech. They now have unlimited campaign contributions that they can give to any political candidate of their choice. So before Citizens United with PACs, it was a $5,000 limit. Since Citizens United, we now have super PACs, which can give unlimited amounts of money. Now let's see how this plays out. So in the US, guys, there is a super PAC known as Americans for Prosperity. Sounds good, right? It sounds good until you understand who backs Americans for Prosperity. So what is Americans for Prosperity? It is a right-wing lobby group that looks to ensure free markets reign, deregulation is the order of the day, and low taxes. And they are the brainchild of two brothers. One brother is named Charles Koch, and one brother is named Daniel Koch. Now let me tell you about them. So this is Charles and Daniel Koch. One of them actually died kind of recently. I can't remember which one, but damn, they have some nice teeth. Anyways, when you have the amount of money that the Koch brothers have, you will have the best teeth in the world. All right, so Charles and Daniel Koch. So what do they want? They want more money. Why? Because they're rich and they want to be richer. How much money is enough? I don't know. I'll never have enough money to know how much money is enough money. Just so you're aware, Charles and Daniel Koch are each worth $50 billion. So their combined wealth, right, between brothers is a lot of money. Now, why do they need so much money? Why do they want more? Well, what kind of question is that even to ask? And as it says down here, bro, are you a communist? I mean, why would you even ask, is that enough money? All right, now, Americans for Prosperity. This super PAC represents the Koch brothers' attempt at influencing electoral politics in America. And it also represents their attempt to ensure legislative decisions do not impact their personal fortunes. So Americans for Prosperity, guys, who it's a lobby group, what they're trying to do is ensure that there's not regulations and other hurdles that impact their pocketbooks. So this super PAC lobbies the American federal government to ensure that legislative and regulatory decisions aren't made which hurt their personal fortunes. So this is the rich literally using campaign finance laws now, which are incredibly lax, in order to dictate what laws are passed. Now remember, these individuals give campaign contributions and swanky fundraisers to these political candidates, and in return, these political candidates ensure that laws aren't passed which don't harm the interests of their corporate donors. So it is quite literally quid pro quo at its worst. And I ask you this question, is this democracy? Is this by the people, of the people, for the people? And I don't see how any sane person can't see this and be like, holy, you know what? How can this actually be real? But this is the world we're living in now. So Americans for Prosperity is also active, guys, in individual American states. So if you remember when we talked about labor unions, we talked about the so-called right to work movement, which sounds good, right? It sounds good. When you use euphemistic language like the right to work movement, it sounds like, you know, it's a good thing. But really what right to work is it's that movement that is anti-union. It is union busting, and the Americans for Prosperity movement has convinced Americans that unions are bad for them, which again is demonstrably not true. Where you have strong unions, you have a stronger middle class, you have better benefits, You have more vacation days. You have higher wages than in non-union states. Yet somehow, right, Americans for Prosperity has convinced the very people who benefit from unions that unions are bad for them. This is crazy, yet this is what is going on. Now, this video explains what super PACs are. So again, folks, watch the video, okay? Watch the video. And I thought I would share this last slide with you, right? Let's all take a sec and raise our glass of iced tea to what used to be America, right? America used to be the greatest experiment in democracy and liberalism in the world. Now it is an empire, in my eyes, in decline. And it hurts me to say that because I love what America stands for, what it stood for, what it meant in 1776 and beyond. But that America is gone. So this slide says the corporate states of America, and you have all of these powerful corporations who of course use their lobbying power to dictate the politics of that nation. So it says the United Corporate States of America. This is not a democracy, not even a republic. This is a corporate oligarchy ruled by the few mega rich. This government is a Congress, President, and Supreme Court owned by the corporations, for the corporations, and never for the people, never for justice, never for anything other than corporate interests. We're all being taxed without representation, the original cause for the American Revolution. We're all being made fools and puppets to serve the interest of the United Corporations of America. We are just workers and consumers. We are just soldiers for corporate wars. We are ignorant of this because corporate education. We are ignorant of this because of corporate media. We are ignorant of this because of corporate culture. We are just the workers with capitalist dreams, which 99% will never achieve. We are just happy that our TV, internet, we are just consumers, greedy, selfish, buying to show off what we have. We are just happy with our TV, internet, iPhones, and our culture of non-thinkers. You are going to do nothing about this because you are brainwashed every day to serve the corporate interests. End of message. It's been good knowing you, democracy. Peace, guys, and good luck.